Cosplayers. They're everywhere. Regardless of which side of pop culture you're on, chances are you've come across one at some point in your life. You can usually find them in cons or at the back of a 7-Eleven lighting a joint. Their origins have always been a topic of debate. Some argue that it dates back to the Renaissance era, when people would dress up in masks for masquerade parties. Others say that it's derived from kabuki, a traditional form of Japanese theater known for its glamorous costumes and stylized performances. Cosplaying truly didn't hit it big until the 90s, and since then they've been hiding among us, lurking in the shadows, blending in with the rest of society. Believe it or not, cosplayers don't get as much love as they should. I mean, sure, I've seen a bunch of them get tons of traction on social media, and as fun as it is to take selfies with 20-something white women that eerily resemble your forager from Spy Family, not a lot of people tend to appreciate cosplaying as a form of self-expression. These people spend lots of time and money embodying their favorite characters, going as far as to make their own costumes and renting studios for photo shoots. As lucky as I am to be friends with several cosplayers, I don't think I've ever fully appreciated the grind that goes on in their lives, until now. You see, in 2019, Yu Hashimoto decided to write a manga series that did for cosplayers what The Fall Guy did for Hollywood stunt performers. Both of them are deeply passionate love letters to rather underappreciated communities, Trojan horsed as romantic comedies. And because of that, nobody seems to talk about either of these things. One bombed hard at the box office and faded into obscurity, while the other got an anime adaptation that was born and raised in obscurity. Of course, I am talking about the 2024 dystopian action thriller 2.5 Dimensional Seduction. Most countries go through a cycle of 4 seasons every year: winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And with every season comes at least 1 or 2 animes that become the talk of the town. You have your free rents, your dandadans, your solo levelings, and so on. And then there's 2.5 Dimensional Seduction, an anime that, despite its apparent popularity in polls and gashapons, nobody ever talks about. I've seen more people talk about Mr. Beast's Amazon Prime show than this anime. Not a single otaku that I know has actually binged this from start to finish. Probably because, number one, they took one look at the title and thought, I want every volume of this manga burned to the fucking ground immediately. Number two, Dandadan was airing around the same time, and more people paid attention to that instead. The competition was just too fierce. Number three, it's not 2015 anymore, and these ecchi animes don't get that much discourse like they used to. And number four, all of the above. As far as I'm concerned, I might be the only person in the world bored enough to finish 2.5 Dimensional Seduction in its entirety. This is gonna be the first and probably only video essay on this anime on this site, so I'm either breaking new ground or only getting 5 views on this thing. Obviously, I wouldn't expect an anime with a title like this to be Oscar-worthy kino, but much like a mine full of diamonds, you'll find that this anime surprisingly has a lot of heart and emotional weight to it. You just gotta dig deep enough to get there. I guess the best course of action here is to quickly summarize everything that happens here. It's quite the roller coaster of emotions, like Lord of the Rings, but instead of hobbits, dwarves, elves, and orcs, you have cosplayers, otakus, photographers, and more cosplayers. Look, let's just recap this thing real quick. Our journey begins as we meet our protagonist, Masamune Okamura. He's the president of his school's manga club. He's also your average otaku, the type of guy who has no friends because of his crippling obsession with fictional anime women. He's most particularly fond of Liliel, who's this angel-like character from a long-running dark fantasy action series called the Ashford Chronicles. Okamura loves Liliel so much that it's caused them to reject real women altogether. Logistically speaking, he probably hates Sydney Sweeney because she's a 3D girl, and I find that hilarious for some reason. Really, the only unrealistic part of this character is that he doesn't smell like he hasn't showered since 2011. Unfortunately, his world slowly comes crashing down when a girl walks in. Her name is Lilisa Amano, and she really wants to join the manga club. But because she's a 3D girl, Okamura tries everything in his power to shoo her away like a pesky insect. His nightmares don't end there, as it turns out that Lilisa turns out to be just as much of an otaku as Okumura. Not only does Lilisa love Liliel just as much, but she also wants to be Liliel. That's right, she's an aspiring cosplayer, and she proves this by undressing in front of Okumura. Poor guy. It's only the first episode, and he's already been through so much, before putting on her Liliel costume. Okumura is aghast when Lilisa's costume resembles Liliel down to a T, as he is gaslit into believing that his angel waifu exists in the flesh. How is this even possible? How was this amateur cosplayer able to create a costume of Liliel so accurate to the character, down to having the exact same height, voice, and breast size? The anime never really dives deeper into any of this, because it's a lot funnier knowing that this girl just so happens to look exactly like his waifu for laifu. What's even more unrealistic about our main character is that there's this other girl who's madly in love with him. Mikari Tachibana has been friends with him since childhood. One time, he saved her from bullies by pretending to be Lord Ashford, and she's been simping for him since. She started reading manga and even changed her hair to look more like Liliel's in the hopes of getting closer to him, until Okumura turned her down because he loves anime girls too much. Which is kinda based, actually. For the next couple of years, Mikari became a popular model, and the only reason she took this career path was just so she could get Okumura to fall for her. Imagine being so caught up in unrequited love that you dedicate your entire career to get your crush's attention. If I was in this place, at this point I would just migrate to a new country and start a new life there entirely. She would never find me ever again. Get myself a new name and everything.
You understand there's no coming back from this. I mean, you're gonna get new socials, new identities. You can't contact your friends or relatives ever again!
Later on, Mikari catches Okumura, with Lilisa dressed up as Liliel, and thus begins a love triangle that doesn't really last very long, nor does it really matter that much in the greater context of the plot. Trust me on this one. Desperate for Okumura's attention, Mikari decides to try out cosplaying with Lilisa. They try out a bunch of, how do I put this? Poses that would get this video demonetized if they got any weirder. But Lilisa insists that it's okay to do these poses, since they originated from the manga. How convenient. Mikari goes along with these poses anyway, in the hopes of becoming Okumura's baby doll. Eventually, their costumes get tangled, and Okumura accidentally peeks into things he should not see. And much like Spider-Man, whenever MJ and Black Cat are in the same room as him, it just becomes too much. His nose transforms into a waterfall of blood, and then he dies of horniness. Ballsy way to end your anime, I must say, especially at the third episode. Nah, just kidding. He doesn't die. The audience's integrity does, though. Lilisa wants to prove herself worthy of becoming a popular cosplayer, so she spends several days with Okumura working on her first cosrom. What is a cosrom? Basically, it's like a DVD that's full of cosplayer pictures, I guess. I've never come across one personally in the cons that I've been to. Maybe it's just a Japan thing. Who's to say? They then try selling these cosroms at their first event, but it doesn't go as well as they planned. Okumura believes that if Lilisa puts on her Liliel cosplay, they'll surely attract more customers. And because everyone in this anime is a dumb klutz, Lilisa discovers that she forgot to bring certain parts of her costume. Thankfully, she learns that other cosplayers are actually pretty chill, as they offer to help her out with her cause. Like a Star Wars cameo, Lilisa's cosplay gives hordes of photographers a quick rush of nostalgia, and soon she becomes an overnight sensation within the cosplayer community. Okumura takes photography lessons from one of the photographers back in the event, where he tells him about the 4 horsemen in the cosplayer community. Oh, my bad. I meant to say the 4 heavenly queens of cosplay. One is so committed to getting the exact height and weight of her characters that she's basically the Daniel Day-Lewis of cosplay. One is a corporate machine. One is just a straight-up masochist. And one is basically retired. Okumura returns to school when he is informed that his club room will be handed over to another club because they haven't gotten new members in a long time. It's so funny that his club has been largely ignored by the school for a long time, and once somebody else actually joins, it gets fucking shut down. In order to save their club, Okumura must find an advisor and submit a report about their activities. He finds himself down on his luck until he comes across Mayori, the school's new home economics teacher. Okumura deduces her to be one of the 4 heavenly queens in disguise, and he almost gets murdered out of embarrassment. It's later revealed that Mayuri used to be a lewd cosplayer named Mayora, but she retired to become a teacher. In a last resort to save the manga club, Okamura blackmails her into witnessing Lilisa's cosplay for herself. Mayora blushes so hard, she immediately becomes obsessed with her. I'm surprised her teaching license hasn't been revoked by this point. Okamura catches her in the middle of her mental breakdown, and she agrees to become their advisor. As for their report, Okamura and Lilisa tried to hide their cosplaying activities by volunteering to read manga to school children, with Lilisa reading in character as Liliel. I like how every conflict in this anime gets solved easily whenever she's in cosplay mode. I feel like we're at a point where world peace can actually be achieved if Lilisa dresses up as Liliel at a UN ambassadors meeting. Back in school, Okamura and Lilisa suddenly decide, you know what, we don't want to keep our cosplaying activities secret anymore. We want to show the world what it truly means to be a cosplayer, and that we shouldn't be afraid of expressing ourselves this way. So they throw away their manga report and decide to work on a new one, by going to this other con. There, they meet one of the 4 heavenly queens, Nagomi. The best way I can describe her character in a nutshell is that she's basically Demi Moore from The Substance, if she also had an unhealthy obsession with dating sims. She also develops a crush on Okamura, simply because he looks just like her husband though. Class act. Lilisa has a bit of a heated exchange with Nagomi, which severely damages her love of cosplaying. Okamura tries motivating her to fight back, and just when all hope is lost, Mayora shows up to save the day. With the con about to finish, Lilisa and Mayora show up to steal the spotlight away from Nagomi. She has a bit of a mental breakdown, which lasts 1 full episode by the way, until she changes her ways and makes up with Lilisa. Mayori sends the finished report to the principal, who insists that the club goes on while keeping their cosplaying activities secret to avoid bullying. Yeah, good luck with that. Lilisa begins to make a name for herself in the cosplayer community, with Okamura by her side as her trusty platonic photographer friend. Well, we're not finished. There's still so much more in this that I gotta cover. I haven't even talked about the neurodivergent cosplayer yet. While shopping for supplies, our heroes come across Nonoa. She's a popular cosplayer who looks up to Lilisa like a goddess, to the point where her greatest desire in life is to be her bestest friend in the whole wide world. There's just one problem though. Her social skills are as bad as mine. Jesus. Anytime a stranger comes up to her, she growls like a beast. And the reason she's like this is because she got bullied a lot as a kid. She hasn't made a friend in years, and she's hoping to break out of her shell once and for all with Lisa's help. She accidentally invites her over to a cosplay event, but her social anxiety causes attendees to assume that they're rivals. Still would have been a better fight than Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, if you ask me. Lilisa tries inviting Nonoa to a photo op, but Nonoa, worried that she hates her, runs away. Okamura tries to comfort her, even going as far as to wait until she speaks up. Nonoa breaks free of her past self, clearing up her misunderstandings with Lilisa, and finally achieving her goal of becoming her friend. Okamura and the cosplay gang rent out a studio for a photo shoot, when they come across Aria Kisaki. She's a Gyaru, which I can only assume from watching this in Dandadan is the anime equivalent of white girls who clap along to the Friends theme while drinking Starbucks. She's inspired by Lilisa to try out cosplaying, but she sucks so bad at it that she gets gatekept to death. Honestly, the craziest thing Okamura and his friends do in this entire anime is that they spend the week brainwashing Aria into becoming an otaku like them. God, if only I could do that to my white girl friends. That way they can finally stop rewatching Wicked for the 617th time in a row. We later learn that Aria is a nepo baby. She's the daughter of a mangaka who went into exile after making a series that was widely criticized for being a ripoff of the Ashford Chronicles. 10 years prior, her father had left his family at a time when he was a depressed workaholic, and his manga was on the brink of cancellation. To add insult to injury, the last thing she said to him was that she hated him and manga in general. Seems like we're sensing a common pattern here. Aria decides to cosplay one of her dad's characters in Summer Comiket, in the hopes that they can reconcile. I should also add that Summer Comiket is an actual cosplay event in Japan. It's basically like the Daytona 500 for cosplayers. Yep, you heard me right. This is actually a sports anime, if the sports in question was dressing up as cutesy anime girls for millions of lonely otakus to witness firsthand. One night, Arya overhears from her mother-in-law that her father died years ago, until it turns out that's actually not true.
It never happened.
Her father is actually alive and well, hiding in his own studio with a bunch of interns. It's also revealed that Arya's dad was a disciple of the creator of the Ashford Chronicles, and that he would go on to write its spin-off series, Liliel's Side Story, which the manga club considers to be their holy bible. Okamura also once sent him a fan letter years ago, only to be told to keep his love for his work secret to avoid getting cancelled. I mean, him getting cancelled, not the manga itself. Mikuri also joins along, because she can't move on. Summer Comiket proves to be a challenge for our heroes, dealing with obstacles like rival cosplayers and the scorching heat. We also learn that Lilisa's a perfectionist, doing everything she can to stay in character as much as possible. Much like Jared Leto wearing crutches on the set of Morbius, this backfires on her pretty quickly. For instance, she nearly passes out from a refusal to drink water, but Okamura saves her by providing her a limited edition Lily lunchbox in thermos. If you're familiar with the YouTube comedy series Pitch Meetings, you'll know that one of its most well-known catchphrases is when the screenwriter guy says, "Super easy, barely an inconvenience." Yeah, that's basically this anime's mantra. It's not enough, however, as Lilisa passes out, and all the other girls are mad at her for not cooperating with them enough. Lilisa realizes her mistakes and helps the girls practice their cosplay poses. On the next day of Comiket, they gather so much traction online that Arya's father eventually notices and heads out to the event. At first, he feels a deep sense of shame seeing his daughter again and tries to head back. But then Okamura shows up and yells about his passionate love for his work. Eventually, Arya shows up in costume, and they tearfully settle their differences. Arya's dad thanks the club for saving his life, and then a beach episode happens. I should also add there's an entire episode before this, dedicated to an overseas Liliel cosplayer, but honestly, it only exists to give the main characters a bit of tension in their relationship. Anyways, they head out to the beach, where Arya develops a crush on Okamura. Mayora suggests that Okamura should try to get into 3D girls, in the hopes that he could take better pictures of the girls and their cosplays. However, it is later revealed that, yes, while Okamura was, at one point, into real women, he stopped after his mom left him. Fucking bitch. Mikuri has a heated exchange with Lilisa, where Mikuri admits once and for all that she really loves Okamura. Lilisa also admits that she has a bit of a crush on him too. He overhears all of this and gets conflicted. He wants to stay in the friend zone with them. He's worried that he'll never see Mikuri the same way again. That is, until Mayora admits that while life sucks, there's parts of life that are actually worth living for, and that Okamura should try to break out of his shell some more, and give in to the people he trusts close to his heart. The photo shoot continues, and Okamura takes a photo of Lilisa, not as Liliel, like how he saw her throughout the anime, but as herself. At long last, Okamura realizes that even if he dislikes 3D girls, and is well aware that 2D girls are fictional characters, he'll settle for the 2.5 dimension, as long as he gets to spend more time with his newfound cosplayer harem. The end. And that's really just the basics. I also forgot to mention that Mayora is bisexual, and is madly in love with this lady who loves cosplaying as an elf. Just thought I should, bring that up too. She can also marry Okamura.
新卒バリバリ22歳奥村と5歳差だろ
5歳って小5と高2の差じゃないですか。
大人になったら誤差だよ誤差47歳と42歳の夫婦とか普通だろ普通
Now, if you paid close attention, you might have noticed that the story takes a bit of a dramatic turn as it goes along. If you walk into this expecting a friendless otaku to have his own harem of cosplayer girlfriends, then yeah, you might get crumbs of that, but ultimately you're gonna be disappointed. Although it starts out like any other generic trashy rom-com anime, 2.5 Dimensional Seduction is, more than anything else, a love letter to cosplayers. This anime makes a strong case argument that cosplaying shouldn't just be recognized as a hobby, but also as an art form. It dives deep into the friendships of each of these characters and how they bond over their shared love of cosplaying. Each of these cosplayers are distinct from one another. They all have different personalities, motivations, and experiences with the craft, which really makes their chemistry feel natural and a lot more believable than you'd expect. According to this anime, anyone can be a cosplayer. It's kind of like how the Spider-Verse movies say that anyone can wear the mask, and that everyone who does wear the mask goes through a canon event of some sort. The canon event in question is that you forget the underskirt of your costume, and you're forced to borrow a spare from someone else.
待って待ってミサパン履いてえ下着にもこだわりが未成年がダメ誰かペチコートそれはさすがに予備は
The characters fall into two different categories, the cosplayers and the otakus. In my headcanon, they're part of a Victorian-era caste system, where the cosplayers live large and reign supreme, while the otakus live like filthy peasants, with no other purpose than to bow down at their feet. Let's elaborate further on these, shall we?
The cosplayers.
The cosplayers make up roughly 85% of the population in the world of 2.5 Dimensional Seduction, and they come in many different forms. Some are cross-dressers who flip the male gaze on its head. Others are foreigners, who just so happen to look and sound exactly like other cosplayers, almost as if they're their multiversal variants. And the four girls guiding us into this vast cosplayer-dominated world are Lilisa, Mikari, Nonoa, and Aria. Lilisa is our eyes and ears, in the sense that we mostly see this world unravel through her perspective. Her undying love for Liliel is what drives her rise to fame and power. Mikari isn't as passionate, however, since it often feels as if she's only in it to win the heart of her unrequited love. Also, if these two girls sound familiar, that's because they're voiced by Kari Maeda and Akari Kito. That's right, Shizuku and Kanata themselves, which logically means that this is canon to Love Live now. I don't make the rules. There's even two Bocchi the Rock voice actors in this. On a side note, I like how Sayumi Suzushiro's character in this is like the polar opposite of her character from Bocchi the Rock. Now that's range. That being said, I like Nonoa. She's my favorite character in this entire anime, simply because I find her character arc deeply relatable and uplifting. But then again, she's a socially inept anime girl who spends most of her time curled up in a room deifying her favorite fictional characters. How could we not relate to her on a personal level? And then there's Aria. Once she lived amongst the common folk, until Lilisa and her friends opened her third eye. Eventually, we learn that Aria is the chosen one, destined to embrace her true self and restore harmony to their world. Oh my god, this is so stupid. Mayora is to Lilisa what Obi-Wan Kenobi was to Luke Skywalker. She was once a legend in her craft, until she exiled herself to blend in with the rest of human civilization. No one else has heard from her since. It's almost like she's become a bit of an urban legend in their world. That is, until Lilisa brings her out of retirement, and Mayora takes her under her wing as her apprentice. She sees potential in Lilisa. Too much potential, I must say.
何なのあの尊い生き物天使なの神が私に使わせたのしんどい無理好き抱きしめたい母性出るいやいくら抱きしめてもこの思いが晴れる気がしないどうしたらいいあ課金したい重課金でお世話天野リリさん
If these cosplayers were divided by social status, then Nagomi and Magino would probably live in the upper class. They're backed by corporate sponsors and have armies of otakus ready to picture them at any given moment. But at the same time, they're humble enough to swoop down at our hero's level and bring them right up to the top.
The otakus.
The otaku's sole purpose is to worship these cosplayers like gods, and there is no better character that personifies this mentality than Magino's photographer. While his backstory remains classified to the general public, what we do know is that he once lived with autonomy and independence until he gave his life away to a cosplayer that's roughly 20 years younger than him. Even the interns that work for Aria's dad do nothing but engage in cosplayer discourse like sports commentators. And of course, how could we forget the man of the hour? Okumura's infatuation for Liliel is what causes this new golden age within the cosplaying community. He's less like your average harem anime protagonist, and more like the leader of a highly trained team of professional cosplayers. He's the man in the chair, the true ruler of this new world order, with Lilisa serving as his puppet. Speaking of cosplayers, let's address the massive bust in the room. Fucking hell, why did I keep that line in the script? Given this is an anime about cosplayers and all, I'm going to assume that a lot of people are going to compare this to the much more popular cosplayer anime, My Dress Up Darling. Both feature a loner with a weird hobby who gets pulled into the world of cosplayers by a cute, energetic girl. Although I'd argue that these two examine cosplaying very differently. For starters, cosplaying in My Dress Up Darling feels like more of a backdrop to the whole romantic comedy story they've got going on there. There's like maybe one episode where they go to a con, but that's about it. It's also way more ecchi in comparison. I swear, as I was binging this, I almost considered eating a chili pepper for every time they showed Marin's massive milkers, and dying halfway through. In contrast to Lilisa, who knows how to sew seams like the back of her hand, Marin is less experienced as a cosplayer, having to rely on Gojo's experience making Hina dolls to make the costumes for her. But at the end of the day, they're both equally passionate to cosplay characters they love. It's just that Marin's into more, well, let's just say dirtier stuff. Please don't demonetize me, YouTube. 2.5 Dimensional Seduction, on the other hand, is less about romance, and more about the friends we made along the way. Literally. It also goes further into concepts that My Dress Up Darling sort of touched upon, but never really fully explored, like the art of cosplay photography, and how accurate cosplay should be to their source material. Both even have scenes where a character gets into a long-running anime for cosplay research, and they end up getting emotionally invested in it. I guess to put it simply, if My Dress Up Darling takes cosplaying in a very casual and lighthearted fashion, then 2.5 Dimensional Seduction, for the most part, takes cosplaying very seriously. Not gonna lie though, I can't tell which of these MCs are more degenerate than the other. But then again, this dude whacked it to his crush twice, so you be the judge. For an anime that's called 2.5 Dimensional Seduction, it's surprisingly light on the whole seduction aspect. But boy, it sure is heavy on emotional weight. There's maybe 3 or 4 scenes where the main character actually gets seduced by these cosplayers, but that's about it. And most of them involve the childhood friend of all people. I kinda put this anime on the same level as I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, or Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, and the grand tradition of animes that, against all odds, are much better than what their titles suggest. It's just gonna be challenging to recommend these to someone, because judging an anime by its title is very different from judging a book by its cover, apparently. I think another reason why this anime stuck out to me more than it should is probably because of my past experiences with cosplayers. I attend at least one convention a year, and every time I go, I take as many selfies as I can with every cosplayer that catches my eye. Usually those dressed as characters that I recognize. It's just that I didn't really appreciate their craft at the time. So would you believe that it took me an anime called 2.5 Dimensional Seduction to find a newfound appreciation for the cosplaying community? So, yeah, tell your friends to give this anime a chance. You'll be surprised by just how wholesome it really is. I highly doubt this video will help this anime reach a wider audience, but I promise you all I'm doing my part. As for all the cosplayers out there, whether you're an amateur or a professional, keep doing what you love. Let the love of your favorite characters guide you, and don't let others bring you down. Unless you're selling armpit pics, in which case, I'm on to you.